Hello and welcome to the original podcast. I'm your host, Jamie C. Foster from the YouTube channel known as Insider Mind. And my co-host today is Eric Nielsen from the YouTube channel known as the Looney Turtle.
Yes, hello, glad to be back. So before we get started, I want to give a warning to the audience. We will be discussing some touchy subjects in this episode, such as murder and rape, so viewer discretion is advised. Today with us, we have the host of a true crime YouTube channel that goes by the name of NightDocs.
Hey, kind of an intro there. Speaking of rape and murder, we've got an expert named NightDocs.
That's just like the best way to do it. I mean, just go all out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
My neighbors already think I'm a weirdo, so.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. Who cares what the internet thinks?
How long you been out of jail, man?
Anyway, so you're fairly new to YouTube. You've been doing this. How long have you just been doing this now? It's just starting out.
NightDocs launched officially October 27th, which was 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm. So you haven't been doing it long, and you've already gained. You're on 5,000 subscribers. You just hit that just the other day, didn't you?
I was just looking a few minutes ago, man. I'm trying not to pay attention to analytics right now because it's driving me crazy. But if I look at my channel, I think it's like 50 something like that right now. Yeah, probably gonna smash through 6,000 sometime today. It's insane, man.
Oh, that's really blowing up then, because you did just hit 5K just not too long ago.
Like
so
yesterday.
You're going viral.
Like literally 2 days ago, I was at. I've been keeping track just day to day, just because I've been keeping track day to day, just because I've been lining it up with different releases and different things that I'm doing to promote my channel, just to see what's working and all that. And on Christmas, I was at 3149. So literally like a couple days ago, and on the 26th, the day after Christmas, I was at 3171, and right now it's more.
Man, I bet that feels really good though.
It's terrifying, honestly.
Well, yeah, there's that as well. But that never goes away. So good luck with that.
Oh yay! I quit. This is the last we hear from NightDocs.
But what video is it? Do you know what video is actually bringing the audience to your channel, or is it just like all of them? Is there a specific one that's going viral along with the subs going up, or?
So the ones that had been doing well before a couple days ago, almost certainly the David Parker Ray Toy Box Killer documentary that I did, and I was telling you a little bit before we started recording, like the way that I've been promoting is when I do a real deep dive investigation documentary style video, what I do is I keep the script and I'll make a post on Reddit like Unsolved Mysteries or something like that. And people that are on that sub, they don't want to be spammed with just links to YouTube and stuff like that and everything. I mean, it just rubs them the wrong way, and I totally understand. It kind of has the same effect on me. So what I do is I really try and put a super high effort post up on something like Unsolved Mysteries, where I take the script, I copy it into a post, and I reformat it for readability. And I include links to every single source that I've got, all of the images that I used in the video, just everything. Like what I do is I create a post that I try and make it in a way that you could just read the post and get through the entire video, and you almost have no reason to watch the video, which seems a little counterintuitive. But I'm linking to timestamps during the video, during key moments and stuff like that, and I have a link to the video at the very beginning and the end of the post as well. I also include links to other cases that I've tackled and the posts that I've done as well. And that has been the single most effective way for me to gain an audience. It's the community there is very responsive to that. Every time I make a post, it gets about 3,500 upvotes. It gets multiple awards. Like the David Parker Ray Toy Box Killer one, like it got gilded like 6 times. I think it got a platinum. Like, I mean, it had a very good response in that community.
That kind of reminds me of a YouTuber I did a collab with a while ago. She was a small one and kind of stopped making posts. But she started on DeviantArt doing these sketchbook reviews. And it was just, a bunch of doodles of her explaining how she liked or didn't like something that she had watched. And so she started with that and then adapted it into videos and kept doing the sketchbook reviews on top of her YouTube videos. And I think it's really nice to have a variety of different formats to consume one person's media, because depending on context, depending on audience, it can really engage the viewer differently than a video could.
It's also a very clever way to work around, people who just spam, because you stand out then if you actually mix it up a little bit. And I think those are the people that usually end up taking off on their YouTube channel, because there's those people who literally just put links, title of a video, try to entice them with the title, and then leave, go to probably another subreddit and do the exact same thing. But the fact that you're kind of mixing it up, you're making it a post, but you're also sharing the video at the same time. People, I don't think, realize how much of a difference that really makes. You're going that extra mile, which gets people's attention, and straight away they're automatically interested.
Well, one thing that I will say that's kind of a theme in the comments too on those posts is just a constant, just like, oh my gosh, like, this is an insane amount of really thorough research all in one place. This is more detail than I've ever seen on X case or something like that. And I mean, I'm not saying that to, brag or toot my own horn here. It's just what they see is the effort that you put into the post. And I really do like it. Sounds almost disingenuous the way I was putting it, where I just copy the script and put it on to a post. But I really put a lot of effort into those posts, because I genuinely care about the subject matter that I'm talking about in these videos. This isn't a cash grab for me. This is a new hobby that I've got, that I've just recently discovered, where I feel like I've got kind of a knack for storytelling and for just digging into topics. And it's been a crazy couple of months, man. Like it's almost like I don't understand why I wasn't doing it earlier, I guess. I don't know, but I think I came on the scene at the perfect time in my life. I really did. I don't think I could have done this in my 20s. Like, I mean, maybe I could have like done it, but as far as my own personality and maturity level and my own, I'll just be honest, like my own sense of pride, really, I think this came at a time in my life where life has really kind of humbled me in some really dramatic ways. And so it's been good that it's happened at this point, because I don't know if my ego could have handled it in my 20s. Like,
that's
I really
usually
don't.
a good thing. I actually I follow Ricky Gervais basically on Twitter, and he said something similar, because he became famous when he was 40, I believe. I think he made The Office or something around that age, and he said himself that he's glad that his name took off at that age, because he felt like he had 20 years to find out who he was before he actually went into the spotlight, I guess you could say. So I can totally see where you're coming from in that sense.
People don't realize, like, when you're in your 20s, I mean, yeah, you're an adult, but there's so much growing up you do during your 20s, and so much that changes about you. I'm sure you can attest to that. So
I can definitely attest to that, because I always say that people who say 23-year-olds are adults are 23-year-olds or younger. There's no way you're going to find a 40-year-old saying, yeah, 23, fully grown adult and knows what he's doing.
Right. How old are you right now?
I am 23. So
okay, all right, yeah. I assumed that's what you were getting at. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. That's what I always want to say, because I'm always surrounded by that group. And so,
but honestly, Jamie, like, I'm not trying to just suck up to you here, but I mean, you do seem like a really mature, really just grounded guy that, although you have such a large audience, it's really refreshing to just become friends with somebody that is it hasn't seemed to have gotten to their head, you know, and it's just really, really great. And that's one thing I've been so impressed with this community is, I mean, I'm kind of the new kid on the block, but everybody I've come in contact with, you would expect to find a bunch of prima donnas and a bunch of really just, you know what I mean? But like, it hasn't been my experience at all. Everybody's just been so amazing and so mature and welcoming and supportive. I've been just absolutely blown away that anybody's really given me the time of day, let alone really accepted me seemingly as one of their own. It's absolutely insane for me.
I definitely think a part of that is just for how much effort you've put into your videos. Like, it's just the sheer amount of research. Like I was saying to you that I started catching up on your Toy Box Killer, and it is crazy the amount of research you put into that. And then, just as you were saying at the start of this podcast, the fact that you go to that extra length to promote it by making an article version of your video for people who don't want to just fully watch the video and can just see certain timestamps of when certain things happen. And I think just the amount of effort you've done, and then not only that, on social media you interact with everyone as much as possible, and that's a really good thing because you stand out that way. There's so many people that won't go to the lengths that you are going, you know, like to effort wise, you know, and quality wise. There's a lot of people who just kind of get a camera and just film themselves saying something, right, and then they put it online, and because they've probably seen someone else do it and think, oh yeah, I can do that too,
right?
And you know, and then they eventually, as the more they do, they eventually learn, and they start, their quality increases obviously over time. But a lot of people want to jump straight into it without kind of practicing or thinking, I want to do something really big and stand out from everyone else.
Yeah. And you know, you bring up a good point. You know, so many people, they just see something that they like and they try to just do it, just replicate it. And you know, there's actually really nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just, you just really got to make sure that you're bringing something new to the table.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing you touched on about how active I am on social media, I mean, most, you're gonna laugh, honestly, I just really don't have a life. My life consists of, I wake up, I go to my day job. I've got a full-time career. I get home and I just talk to people, really. And the thing is, I mentioned before about how this came at a certain point in my life where, you know, I feel like I've been humbled enough. I'm not going to just say that I'm, you know, humble, because that's, you know, that's I've definitely got a long way to go on that, you know, but I get you. But I do think practice makes perfect, and especially with humility, really. And I really, really try hard to just be grateful for anything good that's happening and not feel entitled to it. Because I definitely don't feel entitled to where I am right now. And really, I mean, I'm about to go through, I think it's 6,000 subscribers or something like that. And I don't feel like, I almost feel guilty. Like,
you shouldn't, man. You've really earned it. But compared to thousands of other creators who are on a similar amount of sub count to you right now, you really are standing out compared to them, because just the extra levels that you're going to. And it might not feel like you're earning it, but you really are, just with the depth of the research you're going to.
You're gonna make me cry, Jamie.
Even no, but seriously, even the Eroda video, you were on that Discord server for, I don't know, a good couple of weeks, following the
longer
story.
than that. I'm still on there.
Yeah,
actually.
it's still on there. I'm gonna make a part too.
Half of my Twitter followers are all like rabid Harry Styles fans.
I got a couple of those afterwards. That's funny.
Well, I was extremely visible during the Eroda thing, and
I could tell.
I know we're gonna talk about that later on, but it's just, yeah. Anyway,
that's gonna be a great one to talk about. I was just gonna ask you about starting your YouTube channel. What is it that actually got you into making your own YouTube channel? I know you said you've always had that passion of writing stories, but what is it that brought you into the YouTube direction and made you think, yeah, I'm gonna give this a go?
Yeah, so it's Honestly, man, I think it's a pretty interesting story. I really do. I just like just myself just reflecting back on it. I'm just like this is a crazy story. Like honestly, like if I ever get to the point where I get to like 100K, I might do like a kind of how I got here video or something like that. Some sort of like instead of like appearing on camera and just like, hey guys, I'm at 100K, man. It's so cool to be here.
Face
like,
reveal.
Right. Yeah. I'm not gonna do something like that.
I guess it's you're thinking of Draw My Life, where it's like a whiteboard and you draw out a story that you wanted to tell.
I think you'd probably tell it in a different way, I would assume.
Yeah, I would do it most likely in kind of the style that I've already been doing my other videos.
Yeah.
Just kind of telling the story how I got here. I don't know. It's just an idea I've been toying around with for, a couple hours.
All right, well.
But I don't know if I'll actually do it. But anyway, so the way I got started, kind of a long story, but I'll try and
No worries. It's perfect for a podcast.
Hey, good point. Okay, so I'll just dive right into it. Okay.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
Anybody that knows me personally, I have always been involved in some sort of creative endeavor or the other, all my life, pretty much. I'd like to think of myself as a really creative guy. I've been writing and recording music since I was about 15. In fact, just on October 1st, I released a whole album on like Spotify and iTunes and all that kind of stuff. And I'd been working on that album for about 3 years. And here's the thing. I've moved so much throughout my life. I've never really been able to just settle down, plant some roots, and really make some lifelong friends. And I've just moved so much. It's just been really difficult for me to do that. I've got a few that are spread across the United States, but it's been really difficult for me to just really connect with people and really latch on and become lifelong friends with people. And so it's been really hard to like form a band or something and really commit to that. When I was growing up, honestly, like my ultimate dream is I kind of wanted to be a rock star. Honestly, I was writing and recording just ever since I was like 14, 15. And I mean, not to toot my own horn here, but I think I'm pretty damn good. I may not be like, I may not be a technically proficient musician or something like that, but I can write a pretty killer song. I really feel like I can.
Should do that for your 100K subscriber special.
Yeah. Well, so I've been involved with that kind of stuff, and I released this album called Thorns on October 1st. And of course, nobody heard it because, pretty much the only people that have really ever heard my music have been just my close friends and family. And that was enough for me, really. Like it was enough. I had people in my life that I cared about that would hear it, that a few people here and there heard it as well, but I would have to really get out there and try and promote it somewhere to get it heard. And there's nowhere that you can really promote your music that's going to be effective unless you're playing live shows, and I just don't have the ability to play a whole lot of live anything. So anyway, I released that album on October 1st. Nobody heard it. It's out there, but nobody's heard it. And that was okay. I was fine. I never really expected it to just take off. It was just more about, I felt like I accomplished something by just getting something out there formally. And so this was October 1st, and over the next few weeks, I've already been pretty addicted to a lot of different YouTube channels. I was actually pretty addicted to Inside of Mind. But I think I discovered you maybe a few months prior to all of this. I hadn't really like gotten super deep into your content yet, but I had definitely recognized some of your stuff, and I definitely had been subscribed. And then Barely Sociable came along. So I was already a big fan of Nexpo. I've been a fan of Nexpo for a year and a half or something like that. Definitely watched almost everything that he put out, just like everybody, and then Barely Sociable comes along, and me, just like everybody else, we're all like, who the hell is this? Like, what is happening here? Like, he just erupted onto the scene.
Oh yeah.
With that Lake City Quiet Pills video that he did, and then some other stuff that he did. And I think I discovered him a little bit after that. I discovered him when he was probably at he was just about to cross 100,000 subscribers. And he did a video on Hotel Zaza room 322. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So for anybody listening, Hotel Zaza is a hotel in Houston where, long story short, there's a secret room that you cannot rent, evidently. Like they have a bunch of themed rooms on their website, and the room 322, which is a themed room called Hard Times, it is a total anomaly to the otherwise extremely plush hotel rooms that are at Hotel Zaza, where there's usually nice carpet and soft pillows, well-lit room, wide open space. This room is a dark, cold, foreboding closet. It's got a concrete floor. The bed is chained to the wall. There's pictures of skulls all over the place. It stands apart from everything else in that hotel room. And everybody who's ever gotten inside of that room that said anything online, they were all put there by accident. And as soon as the front desk realized what room they had put them into, they kind of freak out and they transfer them to a different room immediately. And most suspicious of all is right over the bed, which is right up against the wall. It's chained to the wall. It's like this brick facade. Really suspicious is that right above the bed, there's this really large mirror that's kind of embedded into the wall that a lot of people have speculated is a two-way mirror. So a lot of people had done, it was the source of a lot of posts on Reddit, going all the way back to 2013. And then Barely Sociable came along and he did a video on it. And I had heard of the mystery, but there was one specific moment in Barely Sociable's video that I think really kickstarted the genesis of me wanting to give this a shot. So there's this part in Barely Sociable's video where he calls the hotel and he's asking specific questions about what rooms are available. And he doesn't outright ask them about room 322. He's asking about the themed rooms, and he's trying to steer the conversation and give them every opportunity to mention that this room exists, and he just couldn't get it out of them. And he included in the video. And one thing that I thought was just really cool was that he actually decided to do some on-the-ground research. And, well, sort of. I mean, he called him instead of, like, going there. But, like, the fact that he actually went a step above what other people have done, because every other YouTube channel out there, they take what's just available online, they disseminate it, they take some notes, and then they make a video on just what's already available out there. I don't know of any other channel really. I'm sure there are, and I'm sorry for anybody who's listening who feels offended that I'm not recognizing your efforts. Not a whole lot of people are going the extra mile to actually get new information that nobody else has. And another tangent, long story that I won't get into too deeply is that I've got a journalism background as well. I was very briefly like a news anchor and stuff like that. And, I was a reporter and all that stuff. Very, very, very briefly. But I mean, that's a story for another time.
Okay.
So, anyway, that part of his video really impressed me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this hotel is in Houston. I live in Houston. Why don't I've got nothing going on this weekend. Maybe I'll actually go stay in the hotel. Like, it'd be kind of fun to just tackle an internet mystery in real life and actually go see this in person. And so I called the hotel and I asked them, I was like, so I'm sure you guys are aware of all the internet stuff about room 322. And they were like, oh yeah. And it's like, I want to stay in the hotel. Can I book a stay in that hotel for this weekend? And they were kind of shocked. They were like, I mean, yeah, you can. Sure. Not sure why you'd want to, but like they evidently consider room 322 a last to book room. It's by far evidently the lowest demand room that they have. And when you see it, you understand why. It's not a pleasant room, and it seems by design. So I made a quick post on the Unresolved Mysteries subreddit, and I was like, look, I've been following this mystery for a while. I live close enough, and I've got nothing going on this weekend. I think this would be really fun to just tackle an internet mystery just for fun, but it's going to be, $250 to rent this room. So I don't want to do it if nobody cares, right? And so would you guys want to follow along if I stayed in the hotel, did some live updates, stuff like that? I was just testing the waters. That post shot up to like 2,000 upvotes. Got like 3 gold awards, stuff like that. I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. So I called the hotel back. I booked the room. I got a confirmation email. I posted a screenshot of the confirmation email, obviously editing out personal information, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And fast forward that Friday, I stayed in the room. I filmed the inside of the room. I did all sorts of investigations on different elements of the room, like the mirror, tested to see if it was a two-way mirror. I really tried to be as thorough as possible. I'd taken a lot of questions from people before of asking them, like, what do you want me to check out inside the room? And I tried to address every single question there. And then what I did was, we were talking about how I promote my content by posting on Reddit all these long-winded articles. So I made a post on all of my findings, and I really enjoyed channels like yourself and Nexpo and Barely Sociable, and I was like, I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm gonna try and make a little YouTube video. And I posted a bunch of just garbage on my personal YouTube channel over the years. It was just it was garbage. Like, if you saw the unlisted videos that are on my channel, you'd just be like, what the hell is this? There's a couple of good ones on there, honestly, but none of it fits the theme of the channel, which is why it's all delisted.
Doesn't fit the rebrand. Makes sense.
Yeah, and so I did a video on Room 322, made this giant post on Unresolved Mysteries. I almost maxed out the character limit for for what you can do in a Reddit post, actually.
Oh, really? I didn't know there was a character limit.
I didn't either. In fact, the David Parker Ray post is in 2 parts because I reached the character limit.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's 40,000 characters. So anyway, the post shot up to, I'd have to go look at it again. I want to say it was like between 35 and 4,000 upvotes, something like that. Got tons of awards. And then I'm actually going to look it up right now while we're talking.
Yeah.
I made this post, and this was such a huge high for me. Like, this was literally the Room 322 investigation I did was literally the most fun I think I have ever had on Reddit. Like, I just had such a good time, and the response was so strong. Found the post here. It's at 39. It's at 3,900 upvotes, and
oh wow.
3,900 upvotes. It's got a couple of gold awards. And then what's funny is half the post is after I actually finished the whole post. I spent like hours debunking conspiracy theories on it, just with like logic and stuff. That's one thing about my personality is I really love to engage in a debate. Like, I'm not like an asshole or anything. It's just I really like getting into it,
Yeah.
But anyway, the top comment comes from user Nightmare Expo, and this comment says, so it's Nexpo, obviously. So
yeah.
comment on this. He says, as a fellow Houstonian, I legitimately had this marked down as a topic of exploration for an upcoming video. You blew the top off this thing. Good work, man. So that's Nexpo reaching out to a nobody like me. And I was like, dude, you're from Houston? I'm a huge fan. I'd love to grab a beer with you sometime. And everybody's like, please make this happen. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, And fast forward a little bit, and I'll get back to what actually caused me to rebrand in a second. But fast forward to a little bit to a couple of weeks ago. Turns out Nexpo and I, Ryan, we live I found out through this post that we both live in Houston, which is pretty cool. And we started talking a little bit after I rebranded. And he, not only do we both live in Houston, we live in the same part of town of Houston. And not only do we live in the same part of town, after talking together, it turns out he lives down the street from me.
I remember hearing about that. That's insane.
Yeah, and so like I'm kind of telling this story just for anybody who's listening here. I mean, I know I've talked about it in the chat and stuff before, but he lives down the street from me, and not only that, at my day job, there's a company that I do business quite a bit. My day job is I work in mall leasing. And so I rent out store spaces, carts, kiosks, all that kind of stuff to small businesses and stuff. And there's a company that we use that, I'm not going to name it for, privacy reasons. But there's a company that we use that designs and builds kiosks for it. And the co-owner to that company is Ryan's dad.
Of course it is.
So Ryan freaked out a little bit and I freaked out, like, oh my gosh, this is like insane small world serendipity right here. And I was hanging out with, so we just started hanging out. Like Ryan and I have become like really good personal friends. And it's so crazy. Somebody that I've been such a big fan of for so long that I get to call like an actual close personal friend that like text me drunk in the middle of the night and like just all that shit right there.
Oh my God.
And so
I mean, talk about meant to be.
Yeah, I guess, man. I guess, but what reason I bring up he and I being so close is he and I were hanging out a couple of weeks ago. We went out for some drinks at a bar here in town. And he and I are just shooting the shit. This is the first time that we had really gotten to really hang out. Like, he'd come in to see me at work a couple of days previous, actually, just to meet me, which was pretty surreal in and of itself. But we're actually hanging out now, and we're just reminiscing on this Room 322 thing. And it's so crazy for him because he's like, man, this is like, I had this video planned out. I'm Nexpo. Like, he didn't say it like that. Like,
no.
He's like I had this huge video planned out tackling this Room 322 thing, and in comes this guy. Like, who is this? And just completely blows the lid off of the entire thing. Like, he just didn't have anything else to do to make a video on it. Like, he was just like, it's done. Like, there's not a whole lot left to do on that case. And like, he was just talking about how crazy that was, like, how among he and other YouTubers, he was onto this thing and it just getting undercut by just this nobody. And this was all on just my personal channel. It had my real name on it and everything. And I was thinking, like, I mean, it was just my YouTube channel just connected to my Gmail account. And I was like, well, this was a lot of fun. I kind of want to try it again. And a lot of people are asking me to do some more content. Maybe I'll just give this a shot. Let's see if I've got a knack for this, and I'll give it a go. But the thing is, I'm the kind of person, if I'm going to try something like this, I'm going in all the way.
Oh yeah.
I thought about it for a couple of weeks. So the Room 322 video came out October 12th, I want to say. Looking at the post right here. October 15th was when I made the Reddit post. Right. And the video itself was posted on October 12th. Anyway, so October 27th, a couple weeks later, I rebranded the channel. I'd been thinking about what I wanted to call it. I figured NightDocs sounded pretty catchy and was pretty descriptive of what I wanted to do. I figured out the fonts that I wanted to use, the typeface, the visuals, the theme, the tone that I wanted to go for, all of that stuff. I really planned out how I wanted to tackle this. I didn't want to just start putting out garbage and see if anybody watched it, And so I rebranded it. I made a channel trailer. I put out my first piece of actual content, which was just a creepypasta story just so that I had something out there. It's not something I wanted to get into a whole lot, but I just wanted to have something out there to just kind of see if anybody watched it. But anyway, I rebranded the channel, and I was already connected with Barely Sociable, and I was starting to get kind of connected with Nexpo. Nexpo wasn't really paying too much attention to me yet, just beyond the fact that I was just this guy that, you know, came along. And I started, I just got really, really deeply involved in Barely Sociable's Discord server and started talking to Barely quite a bit. And he really kind of hauled me to the side, and he's like, okay, if you really want to do this, here's what you should do. This is, you know, he gave me a rundown on some good SEO practices, stuff like that, which I actually have a background in SEO. My internship in college was working for an SEO firm. So a lot of the stuff that he told me, I kind of knew already, but I was really rusty on it.
Yeah.
And so he gave me a really good rundown of what to do on how to generate content that has a high search volume, but low competition, stuff like that. Just to kind of help shape the kind of content that I'm going to do. And so that's kind of what I started doing is I would do keyword research. I subscribed to some SEO tools, and started doing keyword research, trying to figure out a topic list of what I wanted to tackle. And so the toy box one was one of the early ones where it just scored really well on keyword research and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
but anyway,
All right.
long story short, the whole story behind me getting into this, it was a total fluke. It just happened where I just decided I had a spare weekend, and it just turns out to be the perfect marriage of things that not only am I passionate about, but the skills that I've already got, because, you know, I'm already used to doing creative things, and it's coming at a good point in my life where I think maybe I'm not humble enough. I don't know if anybody really is, but I've been humbled enough by life where whatever success that I get, I feel like I can be just truly grateful and give credit where credit is due and not feel entitled to any success that I've been able to have. And, you know, I'm still brand new. You know, this is like this whole story I've been telling you. I'm looking at the post right now, you know, this Room 322 post on the Unresolved Mysteries subreddit says, it says posted by NightDocs 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So a lot's
Only 2
happened in the
months.
last couple of months.
It's crazy. But it's interesting how everything just seemed to fall perfectly for you. I think it's a fascinating story. It's like you hear about stuff like this when people are putting together like some of the greatest shows of all time. Like I remember Breaking Bad. The amount of because I'm a big fan of Breaking Bad, but I
Me
watched
too, man.
a lot of the behind the scenes stuff I always watched, and the amount of stuff that just was a fluke and just slowly came together.
Yeah.
And it fit into this great story. It kind of reminds me of what you went through here, how it's just like you so happened to have Nexbo, who was covering the first topic you covered. Not only that, he lives right.
He lives
pretty
down the
much next
street
to
from
you.
me.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's that, and then obviously Barely Social, getting active on his Discord server. Honestly, everything just seemed to fall together perfectly for you. And then obviously the fact that you mentioned you got a bit of a journalist background. It might not be much, but
Yeah.
that certainly explains, you know, why you probably go that extra mile in a deep dive and
Yeah.
stand out from everyone else, which is truly brilliant, man.
Did you see
So-
the video that released a couple days ago on that chapter?
That chapter, I didn't. I want to catch up on his. I usually wait for a bit and then binge it.
So the reason I ask about that chapter specifically is because I did my first collab with that chapter the other day. It released the same day that the Erota video did.
Oh, really?
What I was going to bring up is the reason my channel blew up like it did over the last couple of days is because of that chapter video.
That chapter video. That makes more sense now. There you go.
And one big thing that I did that I brought to the table on that, usually, like I was talking to Mike, who is, by the way, the nicest possible guy you could ever talk to. Like just an awesome, awesome guy. Like for anybody listening that's familiar with Mike from that chapter, like he is genuinely like a good person, and just his personality that you see in his videos, that's him to a T. Like he is absolutely that. Like he's just as awesome to talk to as you could ever expect.
I haven't really spoken to him much. I think I've spoken to him a few times on Twitter, but yeah, never really properly.
Absolutely worth getting
DMs,
to know,
but
man.
he sounds like such a nice guy, or from what my few conversations I've had with him.
Oh yeah, man. I couldn't say enough good things about him, but he reached out and asked me if I wanted to do a collaboration, and the case that we went into is actually a case I've been researching for quite a while. It was a case passed along to me by a friend of mine who lives kind of near the area where this case took place, and so I'd been researching it for a while, and then when Mike reached out saying like, "Hey man, you're doing great. I'd love to have you on that chapter sometime." And I was like, "Cool. Just let me know what you want to do. I'm happy to join along." And I wasn't sure how collabs work, all that. And he really was, I think, originally just going to have me voice a few parts on it, on whatever case he was already working on, which, I'm okay with that. I am. Was hoping to kind of sink my teeth into something where I feel like I actually contributed rather than just I'm a guest narrator,
Yeah.
And I tossed a case this way. I was like, look, man, I've been looking into this for a while, and honestly, the more I think of it, I think it would make more sense for your channel than mine anyway. So I tossed him this case, and it kind of blew him away. Like, the case is crazy. I think it's one of the most insane cases where a teenager was murdered, and the police have been trying desperately to frame it as a suicide. Long story short. So there's a lot of shady stuff going on in there, like really crazy stuff.
That's another video to add to the list then.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. Like, it is nuts. But but what I did during the video though is I tossed him all of the research that I had already done, and so it was easy for him to just kind of absorb everything, that all the work that had already been done. And he did a ton of extra research on his own, brought a whole bunch of stuff to the table that I didn't know about the case. But what I did was I called the private investigator firm, and I got an interview with the lead investigator on the case, and she let me record the interview and everything. And I just sent him the MP3 of it, and he was like, "Holy crap, you got an interview with him?" Like, and so it's extremely, so the video that just came out a couple days ago, it's extremely current, and there's a lot of exclusive information that we were able to get, with a lot of really exclusive and current insight from the people who are really in the know about what's going on in that case. Really? In fact, the private investigator firm that we interviewed were, I guess, impressed enough with the video that they're actually sharing it on their own social media and all that kind of stuff as a way to get caught up to speed on exactly what's going on in the case. Yeah.
That's brilliant. What exactly has happened in the case, or at least, do you think you could give us a bit of the start of how it happened?
I think I kind of gave you the hook for it early, where there's a teenager named Thomas Brown who is from a town called Canadian, Texas. It's about 8 hours from where I live, a little bit closer to where my friend lives up there. And he just reached out to me through Snapchat, like, "Dude, you gotta check this out, man. Like, I know you're looking for topics probably on your videos, and I'm sure you get recommendations from your own friends all the time, but anyway, I kind of rolled my eyes at first, because, like, when you start a YouTube channel and you get like all these people like, "Hey, you should do a topic on this, and this." He's a good friend. He's a really good friend, and I was like, okay, I'll take a look. Let's see what this is all about. And I started digging in. I was like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. So this teenager, Thomas Brown, he's from Canadian, Texas. He was about 18. I think he was 18. Trying to get my facts right here. He went out one night, missed his midnight curfew. His mom's freaking out, and he goes missing. Nobody can find him. And so there's this huge search and rescue thing going on. His body is found about a year later by a sheriff's deputy who just happens to be walking through the woods at 2 a.m. Says he was looking for deer antlers and deer scat instead of being on patrol or something like that. It's just a really, really shady story, all up and down. So they find his body, and they quickly just declare it a suicide. And they really have tried to stick to that ever since then. Never mind the fact that when they found his car 14 miles from his body, there was blood in the car. A cadaver dog got a positive hit. There was blood splatter, blood pooling. There was a .25 caliber shell casing found in the car.
Oh shit.
So it's a really, really strange case that really calls into question what's going on with local law enforcement in the area.
Yeah, and the police are just there like, oh, it's a suicide.
Yeah, it's a suicide. It's suicide.
Oh
That's all it is.
It's a suicide, guys.
And the
blood in
number
the
one
car.
justification that they have for calling it a suicide is they claim that Thomas on his phone a few hours before his death or his disappearance was in privacy mode looking, Googling suicide hotlines and stuff like that. But the thing is, I mean, the private investigators have looked into this, and there's no way you could extract what he was searching for in privacy mode. So there's no way for them to actually prove the original thesis that they have that he committed suicide.
Right.
So it's a collab that I did with Mike, and I did quite a bit of work on it. He did probably the most amount of work on it for sure. I mean, I want to give credit where it's due.
Mm-hmm.
But it really was a true collaboration, I feel like. And he gave me the script that he'd written for me. I changed a little bit of it here and there just so that it would flow better out of my own voice.
Yeah.
And he put it up a couple days ago, or yesterday, I guess. And it's been doing really well. And so I almost all of the subscribers that I got in the last couple of days have been people from coming over from the collab that I did with Mike.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because you have been it's been flying up in subscribers recently, so that's where it's all been coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
That case sounds crazy. Is that recent or is it like an old
So
thing?
it's
and people are
2016.
just trying to reopen it.
It's 2016, but
okay.
it's still very actively under investigation, and a lot of new information has come out in the last couple of months.
Okay, fair enough. Oh my god. I'm gonna have to watch that now after this podcast. Then
It's good, man.
I'm already getting hooked on all this stuff.
I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I think it's one of Mike's best videos. I really think so.
Oh really?
Like, obviously,
Okay.
I'm biased because I'm in it, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, just me trying to take a step back and objectively looking at it, I'm just like, this is a really crazy case.
Yeah, well, it already sounds great. You said you got an interview with one of the private investigators, so
Yeah.
that in itself is already, the hook to draw people in for that video.
And that's
Oh, man.
the point of me even telling that whole story of that collab with Mike is that's what I'm trying to do in a lot of the content that I'm doing, is trying to go the extra mile that other people won't, and trying to get new information. Like, one of the other earlier videos that I did was about a woman named Heather Tiffany Robinson. It's called Kidnapped by a Serial Killer, where I actually got an interview with a woman who, as an infant, was abducted along with her mother. And the serial killer, his name was John Edward Robinson. He killed her mom and sold her to his brother.
Jeez.
So she found out at the age of 15 that she was a missing person. And so I interviewed her about what that's like. I mean, I found her story so fascinating and so important to tell.
Yeah.
And that video was, when I did the Reddit post on that in the Unresolved Mystery subreddit, that one got a lot of attention there. And I got a ton of new audience members from that particular post.
I'm not surprised. That's brilliant. I mean, to be honest, that's what I'm really liking about a lot of creators recently, is that they're going that, there's a few more now that are going that extra mile to get new information. Like, it's something I've wanted to try at the start of this year, because a lot of it, I tend to do a lot of guesswork with the information that I find. But recently I've kind of realized that I can actually get a hold of a lot of the creators of the things that
Why not just reach out to them, right?
Exactly. So a lot of it is harder because you start to enter the territory of people who are just as famous as Steven Spielberg. So getting a hold
Sure.
of them becomes a little harder. But once you kind of find one guy that knows another guy, they know another guy who knows another guy, who eventually works your way at the top. And eventually, there's a new one that no, not a new one. There's an old ARG, I guess it is an ARG that took place in 2001 that is nowhere to be seen right now. But I've managed to get a hold of the creator of it, who I didn't think I was actually going to be able to. And he somehow has all the entire files of everything that happened saved. And he's thankfully giving it to
Perfect.
me to use into a video. So literally all of this will be completely new information when it finally gets turned into a video. So
Well, I'll
it's
just
things
really
like
quick,
that.
if I could just rewind a second, where you were saying, sometimes some people are like too famous or too well known to get a hold of, and sometimes like I've noticed maybe you can't get a hold of that specific person, but you can probably get a hold of somebody connected to it that would have some sort of authority in the information that they have that you can use to add some credibility to whatever content you're making.
Yeah, that's what I meant when with the guy, when I find a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. They
Oh,
usually
gotcha. Okay, yeah.
have
No,
that.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. Well, one thing that I'm really trying to do that I feel is different than a lot of other channels, other than yourself, actually. Yeah, you do this quite a bit, which is really why I think your content specifically is so engaging, especially the newest videos you've been doing on the new Newology Network. One thing that you're doing is that you're really trying to tell a story. Like if you do like something like an ARG analysis or true crime, what most channels will do is they'll treat it like kind of a police brief where they just list the facts in chronological order, and that's about it, really. But what I've tried to do really, really hard, and it seems like you've been trying to do as well, is I really try to tell a story. I really try and take a macro situation and make it microscopic, where I'll latch on to like a person, and really tell that person's story. Because here's the thing, my goal with every single video is I want somebody to actually feel something. Like if my philosophy on that is, if you can feel something in the content that you're consuming, you've invested in that person, right? Like it's like you've got a part of yourself tied to that now, because people don't remember like dates, places, names. They remember feelings.
Exactly. Well, like you were saying with the police, when it feels like a police doc that's just been read off, that can be consumed, but you might forget it like a couple of days later.
Sure.
You probably just watch that on a binge fest, watching it going back and forth, and then you might enjoy it still, and you'll still go to that channel. Probably it might not stick with you as much.
I'll give you an example here. I'll give you an example. So you can tell a story a couple of different ways. Like at 9:21 a.m., this person woke up to a text message saying that they were, were following you or something like that. An alternative way to say that is, Julie was exhausted after a long day at work. She took off her shoes. She climbed into bed. She was too tired to eat anything. She just sat down. What an awful day. Talk about like what she went through. All of a sudden, 3 a.m., she gets a text message. Who is this? What is going on? And, actually engage the people that are consuming the content, where they actually feel like they're in it with that person. And
you're living in that moment. Yeah.
I just feel like that's so much more engaging than just listing off events.
Oh yeah, that's what I've kind of tried to do recently, because
definitely you have.
One of the things I went into my channel doing is with alternate reality games, or this kind, not just alternate reality games, just this kind of new form of storytelling I've really found engaging, because it feels like you are the protagonist of this story, and you're trying to put these clues together, and you're finding like you're trying to it's like fake conspiracies you're trying to uncover.
Sure.
And you're finding out all these dark secrets these companies have been hiding. But the thing is, once it's finished, it usually gets deleted, because obviously it costs money to keep the sites up. So they usually just leave it, because once its purpose is done, it disappears. And the only people who remember it are those who participated in it. And they have that closest connection to it because they felt like they were part of this story. So when I've gone into my channel and started making all these things, I've wanted to kind of try and relive those moments of stumbling upon that site and then finding out where that how far down the rabbit hole it goes. And
That's such a
this
good
connects
way
to
to do
this.
it too. I mean, if you just,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did in the My Rose video too, is just, it's a story of how, it's not a story about the content itself. It's the story of how I found it and
Yeah.
how I reacted to it and the stakes that I felt like I personally had in this. But anyway.
Exactly. That's I think that's the best way to tell the stories, and that's why I think it's more prominent now in my more recent stuff. Like for example, the War of the Worlds.
Such a
tried to
good video,
relive
man. I sent you
so
that
much.
video of my dad watching that.
Yeah, you did. That was so good. I couldn't believe that when you sent it. Yes, because so things like that I've really enjoyed, because it's like recreating that particular scenario of people just tuning in, listening to it, try and get into the mindset of what certain people are thinking if they tuned in a little bit later than they should have done.
Sure.
And that confusion of why it happened. I just think that's really fascinating. And then obviously covering the backlash and stuff that happened after is obviously just as entertaining. So yeah, that's it's really good. It's a really good way of storytelling, and I'm hoping to experiment more with that in the new year.
Please do, man. Because you've definitely got a knack for that kind of stuff, man. And I think that's really the future for the kind of content that we do.
Yeah, I definitely think so. That, and obviously just gaining, that extra knowledge that others didn't have before, like whether it be an interview from someone who was involved in the situation, and
I'll tell you who's a master of it, and none of the other creators that I'm friends with seems to have heard of him, but he's huge. You ever heard of Kento Bento?
No, I don't believe I have.
You've got to look him up, man.
Yeah?
I'll send you a link later on. He has been outside of the creators that are in our friend group here. He is probably the biggest inspiration in terms of storytelling style that I have, where he just blends art with story. He did a video. I'll send you a link to a specific video he did. The first one that really hooked me to him. He told the story of how North Korea pulled off a $1 billion bank heist, and he does it blending art, where he actually hires an artist. That actually tells it in almost like a comic book style. And there's some interspersed stock footage and stuff here and there, but he really sticks to this kind of comic style, and it is so effective. And that was honestly the biggest inspiration behind the beginning of the Toy Box Killer episode.
I was just
going to
say, because you did the similar thing where you opened it up with sketches. Did you hire someone for that?
I did. Her name is Teresa Donhauser. She is amazing. And honestly, Jamie, if you are looking for anybody to do artwork for any kind of content you're doing, I highly recommend her. She put in so much work. Because I'll tell you, I want to try and tell this story without I'll just tell you. So I made a post on the Draw For Me subreddit asking somebody to create a series of just low effort storyboard sketches, because I had like $41 in my bank account, and I needed something done, and I told them all what I could pay to do this, and I was like, I am sorry that I'm offering such a laughably low amount, but this is genuinely all I can afford, but I really want to do this content. And eventually she came along, and we negotiated a little bit differently and all that. And she was still willing to take it on for quite a bit lower than what she normally would take on content, but she liked the subject matter, and she liked what I was bringing to the table and all that. And she was like, you know what, I'll do it. It might be a little while before you get the content, because I'm going to obviously place a low priority on this, because I'm working on some actual paid gigs with some people that are paying appropriate amounts. And I was like, absolutely, that's totally fine. I really, all I need is just some low effort, just storyboard sketches for this. That's all I'm really asking for. And she turned around, and I mean, I guess you've seen the beginning of that. I mean, she went so far above beyond what I had ever asked for, and she did such a good job. Those drawings that she did are so detailed and so gorgeous.
They're beautiful, yeah.
Every creator I've shown those to, they're just blown away, like, oh my gosh. And if you look at her Instagram, she has even better stuff on there.
Really?
Oh man, she does a lot of stuff like, creatures and monsters and stuff like that. But she's very versatile. That's just the kind of stuff that she likes to create on her own. And she's just very, very talented, sweetest girl you could ever possibly talk to. And so when she finished it, it was a few paychecks later, and I had a little bit extra money, so I paid her. I think it was almost twice what I had promised her. Just because I was just so grateful that she put so much effort into it, and I just felt so guilty that I could only offer so much, and and I've been trying to repay the favor that she did for me by, really promoting her to any creator that I come in contact with who may be looking for art for artists or anything like that.
Right. Oh, you'll have to link me then, because
she really is. Like, I'm not just telling you that because like she put so much effort in for my stuff, not just because of that, but just the simple fact that she really is extremely talented, has a great work ethic, and just the nicest, sweetest, most understanding person you could talk to. So she's absolutely a delight to work with.
Perfect. Well, I guess since we're actually on that particular topic about her designing the opening of your Toy Box Killer video, we could move on to that situation, and you can give a bit of a brief, I guess, hook on what that video is about, or documentary, I'll call it, because it is technically a documentary. So feel free to explain it to the audience listening.
Yeah. So early on when I rebranded the channel, I was looking for some content to do. I wasn't really sure what content I was going to dig into yet, so I was looking for stuff to possibly plan out. And that was one of the first subjects that I came up with when I was looking into, what would perform well with like keyword research and stuff like that. And it seemed to have a pretty good hook. I mean, the guy's called the Toy Box Killer. I was, that's kind of catchy.
Yeah.
And so I was just planning on making a little, a 15-minute video about, hey, look at this. This is kind of crazy. This is weird. As I kept digging in, that intro, by the way, that we were talking about was the very first thing that I did, because I had such a clear vision of exactly how I wanted this to start off. Like I found the story of the way he was caught, Cynthia Virgil Jaramillo, how she escaped was so riveting, and it was so dramatic. It was like a thriller movie. I was like, I've got to start it off with this. So that was the first thing that I did. But anyway, the real hook to the story is David Parker Ray is one of the most prolific serial killers in all of American history that you've never heard of. And there's a few reasons why. The crimes he committed were so horrific and so unspeakably horrible. It's hard to get the word out there without talking about some extremely unsettling and unthinkable topics, because he would kidnap women and keep them inside a custom-built $100,000 custom-built torture chamber that he kept on his property. This was like a medieval, it genuinely rivals medieval torture cells.
It really sounds atrocious, just like the thought of it.
It is insane. And he is believed to have killed up to 60 women.
Jesus.
And that's starting at the age of like 14 or 15, we think.
And that's just people he's killed. He's also tortured people and then let them go.
More often than not, it seems like he did let them go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, more often than not, he let them go. But what was so heinous about it is he would rape and torture these women for days on end, sometimes for up to 3 months. Jesus. Inside this 22-foot long cargo trailer that he called the Toy Box. And he he would keep them for up to 3 months, and before he let them go, he would drug them up extremely heavily on 2 barbiturates called sodium pentothal and phenobarbital. Now, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a chemist, I don't really fully understand the effects of it, but drugging them up combined with some pretty heavy brainwashing that he did on them, because those drugs evidently made people a lot more susceptible to suggestion and manipulation and things like that. And basically he found a way to just erase their memory. And he would then put them out back on the street where he found them, give them the clothes that they had on months prior, even though like they were basically naked the entire time he had them. So they were wearing their clothes for the first time in months out on the street. They have no idea where they are, how much time has passed since the last memory. They just, everything is fuzzy. They can't explain to their loved ones where they've been for so long. They can't explain why they hurt all over, why they're bleeding, why they're like, they just can't explain it. And although they didn't have memory of it, like the psychological effects definitely stayed there.
I can imagine, because that's just like you wake up and 3 months of your life is gone. So you know something bad happened at that point, and that I can only imagine the mental toll that would take on you.
And what's most horrifying is that, I mean, it's so hard to just say one element is the most horrifying, but one element that is just so upsetting to me is there are dozens and dozens and dozens of women out there today that were victims of David Parker Ray, who are missing periods of their life, and they have no idea that they were a victim of him.
That's crazy. Because didn't you post that on one of the Unsolved mystery subreddits?
I did.
And they removed it because they believed it was solved?
Yeah, that was a little frustrating. The mods of the Unresolved Mystery subreddit removed it because they're like, oh, he was caught. It's resolved.
Yeah, but that's taking out the entire fact that there are probably...
The whole point of this case is not only that there are so many victims who have no idea that they've been victims. What's crazy about David Parker Ray, he was 100% a serial killer. They have actual, like, he filmed himself doing a lot of it. They have it on tape of him actually killing people. They were never able to convict him of a single murder because they could never find a body, and they could never identify any victims that they saw on the videos.
Oh.
Like, he kept them masked and all sorts of stuff, and there was only one victim they were ever able to identify, and it was all because of a tattoo that she had. And although the video was grainy and fuzzy, they were able to enhance it, and they put it out into the public. They're saying, we're looking for somebody with this tattoo. And they found a woman named Kelly Van Cleve who was missing 3 days of her life. And through psychological counseling, she was able to piece together the ordeal that she suffered. And she was able to testify against him at the trial. So when David Parker Ray was convicted, he was convicted of kidnapping. He wasn't convicted of murder. He was never convicted of murder.
And they were never able to find the remains of his victims?
There were remains they found that they couldn't definitively tie to him. And there were some, it was a man by the name of Billy Ray Bowers. It was I can't remember if it was his boss or something like that. It was a fellow resident in Elephant Butte that David Parker Ray allegedly shot in the back of the head and threw his body into Elephant Butte Lake. And it washed back ashore about a year later. And they didn't even think it was a homicide at first. They thought it was maybe a suicide or something like that because his body was so badly decomposed they couldn't really get anything out of it. It wasn't until David Parker Ray was arrested that they started looking at it as a homicide, but they were never able to definitively connect him to it. There were some other remains that they found in Elephant Butte Lake where it was basically a bag of human mush, and there were some bone fragments. But they couldn't extract any DNA to do any DNA analysis or anything like that because it had been in the water for so long that there's nothing you could read from it, evidently.
God.
So I guess the unsolved part of this mystery is just, like, what happened to all of the victims that didn't survive?
Right. Well, there's so many unsolved things about it. Like, so many. Like, we have no idea how many victims he had. We have no idea who.
Is there any estimate on how many victims he actually had, or like do they know if it's in the hundreds? Do they know if it's
The only
in the
estimates that
thousands?
I've been able to find is on the actual murders, and they estimate that it's as high as 60. So Cindy Hendy, one of his accomplices, and that's what's another crazy thing about this. He had 3 accomplices with this.
Jeez.
This wasn't just him. He was basically like a crazy cult leader.
Really was. It's terrifying.
He was able to con and persuade so many people into joining him, not only to be just enablers or bystanders, but turned them into vested accomplices that were every bit as guilty as he was. And
he is literally something you would hear in some kind of movie. The fact that
it's so crazy that
out
it's stranger than
everything.
fiction.
It's so bizarre. Like the fact that he thought about filming it, but he was so confident in filming it because he knew he could blur out the faces so no one could identify them. And oh my, it's just
What's crazy about him filming it is that he sold the tapes.
Jesus Christ.
There were people that were buying it.
Oh,
Oh my God. And didn't as well, just to make it even worse, he had a tape that he would play automatically every time he had a new victim.
Yep.
That would give them instructions.
45-minute orientation tape.
45-minute.
Yep.
Oh my God. I mean, you played that at the start of your documentary.
I played a snippet of the original audio.
A snippet of the original. Which to me is actually, that was the brilliant way to open it. Because that felt like an actual opening to some kind of Netflix original or something like that. you know, like The Making of a Murderer or something like that. It feels like that's how they would open something when you go onto Netflix or HBO.
Thanks,
it was
man.
really good that. But
So
yeah,
what-
just the way he spoke that was just chilling. You know,
Oh,
just
yeah,
how
man.
he says it so calmly.
And that audio is really hard to find, by the way.
Really.
It's really hard to find. You can't find a full version of the original audio. There's a bunch of YouTube videos out there where there are people that narrate through the transcript, which, by the way, as much research as I did into this case, I have yet to get through the entire transcript. I just can't. It's too...
Is it so graphic?
Yeah, and I was telling you before we started recording, there's so much that I left out of the post, of this conversation, of the video itself, that I just don't... I never want to hear myself say out loud some of the just insane stuff. There was one thing in particular that I read during my research. It was in a book called Cries in the Desert. That I was reading for research. I read a couple of books for research on this. And there were a couple of things that I read that it really deeply affected me mentally. Like I genuinely had a hard time sleeping that night. And that was the moment that, you know, we were talking before we started recording, where I said, I literally almost threw this whole thing in the trash. I was just like, this is too much. I mean, and the fact that, like, during the documentary, there's that part where the documentary that I made where it talks about how they popped in a tape in the toy box to see what was on these tapes that they were finding, and they found video footage of him, what he was doing to these women, and they watched a few minutes of it. They popped the tape out. They couldn't handle it. They walked outside. One of them threw up all over the ground. One of the other FBI agents looking into this, her name was Patricia. Her name was Patty Rust, and she's a 36-year-old FBI agent. They asked her to go back into the toy box and spend 5 days sketching all of the objects and everything that was inside, which I can never figure out why they needed a sketch artist if they have photographs and all that.
If they have
but
everything, yeah.
Never was able to figure that out, but evidently they still needed somebody to do sketches for the evidence response team. So she spent 5 days inside of the toy box by herself, a woman, right? That's in the environment of where unspeakable things happen to other women. She left the toy box 5 days later. She turned in her assignment. They told her to go home, take a break. She flew home to El Paso, Texas, and took out a revolver and shot herself in the head that night.
Jesus Christ. I mean, you can only imagine.
And the reason I tell you that particular element is that kind of stuff is why I literally almost threw this whole thing in the trash and just not finished it. But the only reason I really finished it was because not only was so much work already done so far on it, but Teresa Donhauser, the artist that I had hired, I told you that intro was the first thing that I did on this, and I would not be able to just not finish it and not have her see her work see the light of day after how much work she put into it. And I wanted her to be able to let that be seen. But now you understand why what I go into in that, and I try to sanitize it as much as I can. But this was the first piece of content that I came out with that I told my parents and especially my mother. I was like, just don't watch this one, please. Just don't.
Yeah, it's really bad.
My dad still watched it and he was pretty spooked.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. But now you understand when I say I almost gave up, but the hardest part was the research. Once the research was done, I wouldn't say I was desensitized to it, but it was the initial shock and horror of it all had passed, and all I needed to do is find a way to tell the story, write out a script that explained what happened, and try and do it in a way that, and this is really hard, by the way, try and tell the story where you are not glorifying the crimes or the criminal, but you are trying to bring attention to what happened, the story that happened, and do it in a way that's most importantly empathetic to the victims.
Yeah, definitely. I think you did that a pretty good job. You kind of a lot of it. You told the story from the perspective of the victims, or at least we're witnessing.
Yeah.
The victim, especially the opening where she was running. Was that the one that was the only one that properly escaped after just 3 days because she played along?
So there's one other one, actually. There's one other one a lot of people don't know about, and I didn't go into her into the video. Her name was Angela Montano, I think is what her name was. But she escaped by kind of manipulating them back. And it was actually kind of interesting because she played along as much as possible and tried to act like she was having a good time. And she basically was so enthusiastically into it, like she wasn't at all, but she tried to play it off like she was super into it and that she loved David Parker Ray and Cindy Hendy and all that. And they were so impressed with her. He said something along the lines of, if I'd known you were this nice, I wouldn't have taken you in the first place. And so she only had to endure about 3 days of it. And they didn't even drug her up by the end because she was asking if she could come back and blah, blah, blah. She really sold it. And so they dropped her off, drove off, and she started screaming and running down the highway trying to flag down a car. And she gets picked up by an undercover cop. And she gets into the car and she's just crying hysterically over what she's just gone through. And she tells this guy what she's just been through, and he's honestly not believing it because it's unbelievable. You're kidnapped and put in a $100,000 custom built torture chamber for days that it's being filmed, and there's it's unbelievable. I don't know. I'd like to think that I would be, I would listen to victims and all that kind of stuff. But if somebody told me something that's that out there, it's so crazy that you couldn't make this up. It's too strange and too insane to make a good fictional story, I think. But
yeah, it's way too hard to decide on what you would do in that situation because everyone likes to think they be the hero, but that's always not the case. I remember, I don't know if you ever watched there's a YouTube original from Vsauce's Minefield, and he sets up a scenario where you have to be the hero and you have to make a choice. And it's
Is that the one where they're in the room and they're
it's a train.
Yeah, the trolley experiment where there's 2 rails, one with 5 workers on it and one with just a single worker on it.
Okay, I haven't seen that one then.
Yeah, would you change the direction of the train? Like if you don't change it, it'll hit the 5 people. If you change it, it'll kill that one person.
Got it.
Yeah, so they did that scenario with I think 5 or 6 different people, maybe even more. And they brought it in like it was a realistic scenario, you know, like they'd volunteered, and showed them the controls. They showed the main control that switches the track, and they left them to it because the conductor or someone who was monitoring it had to leave for a quick emergency.
Yeah.
And then the train they saw on the camera was going closer and closer to these 5 guys we're going to kill. So they had to choose between, you know, whether they wanted to kill 5 or 1. And most of them, even though most people said they would switch the track and let the one person die, most of them froze. They let it happen because they didn't know what to do. They didn't want to feel like they were the one that killed that one person. Even though they saved 5, they still technically would have been responsible for killing that one person.
Jeez.
And I think one person did it.
Kobayashi
overall,
Maru.
maybe 2. Yeah, it's punk. It was crazy. But that just reminded me of that when you said, you know, you'd like to think you'd do something in that particular situation. If like a woman's coming up to you that night and she's covered in blood and screaming at the door, but you just don't know how you'd react. Would you freeze?
Yeah.
Would you drive off?
Even Cynthia Virgil, when she escaped, the one that's in the introduction.
Yeah.
So I got some of the facts wrong in that intro because it was so early in the research that I did it. First of all, it was in the middle of the day. Second of all, he wasn't in a secluded area. It was a pretty well-populated little neighborhood. And she actually stopped a bunch of cars after she ran out. But they're seeing this bloody, naked, hysterical woman trying to get into their car, screaming at the top of their lungs. They got terrified. They just drove off.
Yeah. I mean, as much as you don't want to admit that, but you can see why people would do that. They're just terrified in the moment. And
right.
We like to think we do that, but
you don't know the story of what's going on. You just see a hysterical,
exactly.
naked, crazy woman trying to get into your car. That's terrifying.
It's terrifying at the thought of it, and as awful as it is, you know, it might be something you do in that situation where you drive off.
Yeah.
No context of why that woman is covered in blood.
No
why
context.
She's banging on your door. That's fascinating in itself. Just how we would react in these situations when we're pushed against the wall to quickly make a decision. And what we would do. It's fascinating. I mean, this case in general, it's just like I said to Eric, because I was catching him up on this particular case, and the way I actually described it, it was kind of like a mixture of Ted Bundy and Jigsaw. It was so those 2 particular things. It reminds me of that just for the torture chamber, the tape playing before something happens, and just people losing their memory, being dropped off, and just this guy who kind of has a similar I was going to say fetish, but I don't know what the word would be.
He was a very specific, very rare type of criminal that they call a sexual sadist. Which sounds like something that you would, you know, understand, and, you know, maybe you've heard the term before, but it's a very, very rare diagnosis that people use for types of criminals, where people get actual pleasure the more their victim suffers. And the thing is, and I think one of the reasons that we briefly started to talk about how crazy like it is that, you know, I feel like it's insane to me that David Parker Ray isn't the most famous serial killer, and there's a couple of reasons why. And one of the reasons as well that I'll get into here real quick is that it's so uncomfortable hearing about this kind of stuff. There's no way to like make a documentary you could air on like CBS or anything like that covers this kind of stuff. There have been a few, but they don't go into anywhere near the detail that I went into, because the most insane parts of this case are just unspeakable. But what's absolutely insane for me is that these people are still alive and they have no memory of any of this, though.
That's the scariest part.
Yeah.
These people, you can only imagine the mental health that they'll be probably going through right now of just not knowing what happened to them on that day. That's almost why it's kind of important to get this kind of story out, just on the off chance if any of them hear about this particular person that made hundreds of women, potentially thousands, don't know, but
well, I gotta say, I was really surprised to hear. I was talking to Blame It on Jorge yesterday as well, who was talking about how much he liked it, and I'm genuinely amazed when another creator tells me they actually watched the thing, because I mean, it just you can probably attest to this, like when you're a creator, I mean, your bar for what you'll actually watch is pretty high, and so like. And it's such a time commitment. It's 49-minute documentary. So the fact that anybody's been watching it at all, I've just been like, I mean, I'm blown away, and I'm really appreciative that people have actually been giving it a chance at all, let alone actually finishing it.
Hey guys, it's Jamie here from the future. I'm speaking directly to you, the viewers who are listening to this podcast. Unfortunately, the last segment of this, we lost some of the audio due to technical errors, and well, that basically means we're going to have to draw the podcast to a close at this particular point. We hope you really enjoyed. We'll have to get NightDocs on another time to maybe talk about the Eroda stuff that we spoke about near the end. But thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope to see you in the next episode.